Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. This is Chris Parker, and I am having a conversation with Michelle Seiler Tucker from Seiler Tucker, Inc. And we're going to be getting in a bit into her business, but also really into her new book, which is called Exit Rich, the 6P Method to Sell Your Business for a Huge Profit. And that's coming out in June of this year. And she's coming in from New Orleans. I just had to say it that way. New Orleans, Louisiana. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining. Can you kick off the conversation by sharing with us, what is it that you do and why are you doing what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. So I specialize in mergers and acquisitions. I'm also an entrepreneur. I own many different businesses in many different verticals, and I specialize in buying, selling, fixing, growing companies. My firm has sold over 1,000 businesses. I personally have sold over 500. I've sold probably about 300, 400 franchises on top of that. And we're very different than most advisory firms because, number one, I own businesses. So I specialize in buying businesses, flipping them. I specialize in partnering with business owners, investing my money, expertise, resources, and I put my partners on a build to sell program. And we close about 98% of all offers we write. Plus, we typically obtain a 20 to 40% higher selling price for our clients.
It's an incredible resume. And what drives you to do this? So I guess what's the why behind the why there?
That's what I always ask my clients. What's your why? But, for me, I've just always been so driven about entrepreneurship. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. I love to find out how someone with an 8th grade education started a business out of their pickup truck, and now we're selling a company for $70 million. They started selling, out of their pickup truck, and now they're doing about $50 million in revenues, about $12 million in EBITDA. And like I said, we're going to be selling it for about $70 million. Those stories are lots and lots and lots of stories like that. And I've just always been interested in entrepreneurship, how somebody starts, a business. We sold a skincare company where they started their business from their kitchen table and grew it into a multi-million-dollar corporation. So I love entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about it. I feel like the business landscape in the United States has changed dramatically. It used to be that when I wrote my first book, Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013, I did the research and learned that 95% of all startups would fail, right? So the first 1 to 5 years are at the greatest risk. However, when I wrote Exit Rich, as you see behind me, I did the exact same research and learned that the business landscape has changed, and it changed way before the pandemic. So now it's only 30% of startups are at risk of going out of business. However, out of 27.6 million businesses in the United States, those businesses have been in business 10 years or longer. 70% of those companies will go out of business, 7-0. It used to be that, gosh, you could be, if you made it to the 10-year mark, you're golden. You're going to be in business forever. And in the United States, you hear about the big public companies all the time, like Toys R Us in business 75 years goes under. JCPenney, Steinmart, Montgomery Ward's, Pier 1, Godiva Chocolate is closing down 1,500 locations. GNC is closing down 900 locations. But what you don't hear about in the United States are the private business owners on every street corner in every town in every state across our great nation. These businesses are dropping like flies. They're exiting poor. They're selling for pennies on the dollar. They're closing their business. Even worse, they're filing bankruptcy. So it's really my why and my mission, and what I'm really passionate about is to try to help as many business owners as I possibly can be successful and have a successful exit. Because if you think about it, these baby boomers who are losing everything, they've poured their heart, their soul, their money, their energies. They made huge sacrifices along the way for their business to end up with nothing. Many of these business owners lose all their personal assets. They lose their family home. And so that's why I came out with Exit Rich, to try to teach business owners that you need to plan your end game from the beginning. Plan your exit from the beginning. The number one reason that business owners don't sell is because they don't think about their exit until a catastrophic event occurs, whether that's internal or external. Internal being health issues, partner disputes, death, divorce, external being the pandemic. And Steve Forbes says 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell. Well, they're not selling because there's no plan to exit, and business owners don't build a sellable asset. And the number one reason that these businesses are going out of business is because they stop doing what I call AIM. AIM is always innovate and market. Business owners stop innovating. They stop marketing, and they want to keep doing things the way they've always done them. And you can't do that. You're either growing or dying.
Growing or dying. When I read through, because you can now pre-order the book.
Yes, at exitrichbook.com.
exitrichbook.com, and you can also find that on the show notes. And there you can also get a digital copy, I believe, if you pre-order on the website, if I read that correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
What I really appreciated about it is I'm oftentimes more in sort of the .com digital startup space, and that's where they're all about exit strategy. And what I really appreciated about what you're writing, it's actually to create a working automated business asset, as opposed to an exit strategy, maybe Silicon Valley style, which is just beef something up until some sucker buys it. And so it seemed to be a much more, I want to say, down to earth and practical approach with lots of insights in the book. Do you differentiate your approach to maybe what Silicon Valley does?
You mean, are you talking about the SaaS businesses that come up with an idea and then put it on the market to try to sell it? What are you referring to exactly?
Well, digital startups where people put some sort of web portal out there, and they start spending ad dollars to get impressions, and then try to sell some sort of venture capital fund with the impression that actually that traffic is valuable, even though they're completely loss making. That is another way of exiting rich, as opposed to building a truly sustainable business. Yeah.
So that .com, the SaaS businesses is a small percentage of the 30.2 million businesses in the United States, right? A very small percentage, right? So the exit for a SaaS business is very different than an exit for other type of industries. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's what I was sort of trying to highlight. And I'm curious then, who is the perfect reader of the Exit Rich book? Like if you wanted that person to pick that up, that could get the absolute most benefit from those insights, and then maybe having further conversations.
So it's really anybody, even SaaS companies, because we sell SaaS companies. It's really any business owner who has a business. It's any entrepreneur. It's anyone who's looking to buy a business and they want to build a business with their exit in mind. Plus, they want to build their business that they're buying or starting with the end in mind, and on the infrastructure where we talk about the 6 Ps. So really all entrepreneurs should be reading Exit Rich, because Steve Forbes says Exit Rich is a gold mine for those entrepreneurs who leave way too much money on the table when it goes to sell their business. Sharon Lechter is my co-author, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, and she's a CPA, financial literacy expert, and an advisor to many different presidents. She has a mentor's corner after every chapter. Listen, there's a huge problem in the United States. Small business is the backbone of our economy with 30.2 million businesses. If 70% go out of business, we lose jobs. We lose jobs and we lose spending power. You lose spending power, then you lose more. Companies got a business and you lose more jobs, right? So everybody who is in business should read Exit Rich, because business owners are not building their business to be sustainable, to be scalable. And when they're ready to be sellable, that's why so many companies are dying and going out of business. When you have startups succeeding at a much greater rate than businesses that have been in business over 10 years or longer, you got a huge problem in America. So everybody who's an entrepreneur should read Exit Rich if they want to be successful. If you don't want to be successful, don't read it.
I would actually expand that, and I would actually expand that, because I think even if people aren't perhaps maybe going counter to your advice, planning their exit already, But even if they just want to maintain their business, following through these 6 Ps is
Well, that's why I said anybody who
common
owns a
sense.
business.
Yeah.
Anybody who owns a business, any entrepreneur. My husband even says people who manage a business, people who, are managers, people who are directors, CEOs, CFOs, they should all read it too, is what my husband says, because it's all about building that solid infrastructure so you do have a sustainable, scalable business so you don't end up going out of business. It's not just about selling your business. Selling your business is half of the book. The other half is actually building a sustainable, scalable asset.
And honestly, it's a beautiful story. So I would love it if you could give us a teaser of the 6 Ps.
Sure.
And I also have a follow-on question I think there might be a P missing, but I think you alluded to that. So let me start with that one as the purpose. I think there could have been a 7th P. However, in the book, you talk about talking to the entrepreneur about the why of their business. Mm-hmm. Is that something to start with?
The reason I could have done 7 Ps, I could have done 8 Ps, I could have done 10 Ps. The reason we narrowed it down to 6 Ps is it's kind of like the 6 cylinders of your engine, right? The 6 cylinders. You need these 6 cylinders to have a viable vehicle.
Yeah.
I could get into passion, and that could be a P. Pivot could be a P. Purpose could be a P. Persistence could be a P. We could keep going with the Ps, but these core 6 Ps are the cylinders the cylinders of your vehicle that you must have in order to be able to drive your business to success.
And is it okay if we go through those
Sure.
a bit by bit? And the first one is people.
The first one is people. So the number 2 reason, I already gave you the number 1 reason. The number 2 reason that businesses are not sellable is because business owners don't really have a business. They have a glorified job in which they go to work at every day versus a business that actually works for them. So we really look at businesses and say, okay, is this a business or is this a job? And most of the time it's a job. So we're working with our business owners to create a business. You don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business. So you have to have the right people in the right seats. Entrepreneurs have a habit of wanting to do everything themselves. They think if you want it done right, do it yourself. Well, entrepreneurs are not good at everything. You need to focus on your strengths, hire your weaknesses, put the right people in the right seats, and ask the who question. Who opens the door? Who deals with customer service, legal, accounting? Who deals with the IRS? Who deals with manufacturing, logistics, transportation, environmental, etc. The clue is to build the business to run without you. And so many businesses are not sellable because the owner is the business. I had a sweet little old lady call us a few months ago from Texas, and she said, honey, can you sell my business for me? My husband just dropped dead of a heart attack. She said, he left me with a mountain of debt. This gentleman owned a construction company for 45 years. He had no employees. He had no people. He only had subcontractors. All the data for the business was in his head. When he died, the business died. And let me tell you, Chris, this is how most businesses are operated in the United States. I'm trying, my mission in life is to get business owners to stop treating their business as their baby and to build it as a valuable asset that it needs to be, so you don't leave your family in this type of situation. So people is huge. It is the number 1 thing you need in business. We had a dental company who's trying to sell dentists for 45 years. 1 dentist, 3 dental hygienists. I said, I can sell your business, but you have to stay for 2 to 3 years. He goes, I'm not staying. I said, well, then your business is not sellable.
Yeah.
So people is number 1. Number 2 is product. Products is extremely important, especially given this pandemic that we're in. Here's another P for you, pandemic. And products, you have to look at your product, your industry, your service, and you have to ask yourself, is it on the way up or on the way out? Is it dying or thriving? Do you have an Amazon or do you have a Blockbuster? And if you have an Amazon, great. If you have a Blockbuster, then guess what you need to do? You got to do the other P, and you got to pivot. But you have to ask yourself 3 transformational questions, and most business owners don't do this. And this is what Amazon did back in the 90s. Amazon asked themselves, what business are we in? And Amazon said, we're in the book selling business. We sell books. And they're like, what do we do really well, better than anybody else? And they said, we do fulfillment better than everybody else. We're great at fulfillment. And then the third obvious question is, what business should we be in? Should. And Amazon said, we need to be in a fulfillment business, not just fulfilling books, but fulfilling products for everybody. Those three simple transformational questions transformed Amazon from a small bookseller to multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, worldwide conglomerate that they are today. So that's product. Blockbuster saw the writing on the wall with Netflix. They did nothing. They sat back fat and happy. They had an opportunity to buy Netflix, and now they're out of business. So the reason that 70% of businesses are going out of business is right here in this P, in product. They stop innovating.
And Michelle, both of these are really to do with the mindset of the entrepreneur, the business owners. In your experience, why is it so hard for people to ask those hard questions before and open their mind to pivoting?
Because business owners get stuck in a transactional. They get stuck in the chaos. They get stuck in the day-to-day, putting out fires. They're not thinking. They're not working on their business and thinking about their business from a transformational standpoint. They're thinking about their business from a transactional. I got to do this next. I got to do this next. Put out this fire. Make this customer happy. You got to get the business owner out of the chaos and get the business owner working on the business, not in the business. You follow me?
I do. The working on and not in, and being able to take that distance.
It's a big mind shift. It's a huge mind shift.
And if you're working on the business, you're able to see holistically the third P.
Yes. And that's why it's so important. Let me just give a little bit more advice for your listeners. I find this exercise to be extremely beneficial. Get a journal and write down everything you do. Everything you do from the moment you get up, brush your teeth, take a shower, whatever it is. Write it down for 30 days and then put it in buckets. You got bucket A, bucket B, bucket C. Bucket A are those things that only you can do. Only you're going to brush your teeth. I mean, somebody else can, but that's gross. So only you can do these things because that is your core competency. Those are your strengths. Those are things that nobody else can duplicate. Bucket B are those things you're really, really, really good at, but you can delegate. Bucket C are those things that sap your energy because you know what? Business ownership, entrepreneurship is about energy management, not time management. You got to manage your energy. It's like a computer. If you get so overwhelmed with all the things you have to do, with all the cycles, then you're going to run sluggish. You're going to run slow, just like your computer. You have to close down the cycles. So bucket C are like those things like go to the grocery store, mow your lawn, things like that, clean your office, things like that. Those are things you should delegate. You need to figure out what is your hourly rate? What are you worth? If I'm worth $1,000 an hour, I'm going to pay somebody, $15, $20 an hour to do some of these other things for me, right? And in that bucket A are only the things that you can do. Like I focus on negotiations on deals 50 million and up because that's my core competency. Doing podcasts, writing books, those are my core competencies. So that's what business owners have to do so that they can start working on their business and really growing that business versus working in the day-to-day. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Lovely exercise.
So number 3 is processes. And processes are kind of like exit strategy, Chris. People never think about exit strategy until a catastrophic event occurs. No, people don't think about processes until a catastrophic event occurs. We were selling a staffing agency that had a catastrophic event occur on the manufacturing floor. The employee lost an arm in a machine. So the owner of the business says, gosh, we really need a health and safety process. And I go, you think? It's a little late for that. Lawsuits are coming down. You're filing bankruptcy. You're going to be out of business in like 30 days. So processes have to be thought of from the beginning. And here's where most business owners get it wrong. Most business owners design the processes around their own agenda. Chiropractors, perfect example. My hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 12, 3 to 5:30, Tuesdays this hours, Thursdays this hours. Are they designing their hours around the patient's experience or around their own chiropractic agenda of what they want to accomplish in their life? Which is it? Around their own agenda, right? Because patients work all day. They can't keep up with those hours. So McDonald's, did you ever watch the movie The Founder?
No. Worth it?
It's another movie. Oh, my green screen. Gosh. Another movie that you ought to watch, absolutely 1000% worth it. It's based upon the McDonald brothers who started McDonald's. And then Ray Kroc came in and really blew up McDonald's to what it is today. But the McDonald's back in the 50s said, look, we want to develop a fast food restaurant. Because back then they had the drive up Sonic type restaurants and the food was always cold. The order always took so long and they always got it wrong. So McDonald's says, we're going to design our processes around the customer experience. So all business owners need to stop and think, what do you want your customers to experience? And McDonald's said, we want our customers to experience great tasting food that's hot in 30 seconds or less. So they went out to the empty tennis courts and they mapped out the processes. Took them all day long to do this. But that was done back in the 50s. Even though they've been tweaked along the way, you can eat at McDonald's in the Netherlands, Australia, Russia, United States, anywhere in the world and get the same experience, right? So when you design your processes, designing with the customer experience in mind to create happy clients. If you don't create wow experiences and happy clients, your competitors will be happy to do it for you. They must be productive, efficient, and guess what? Most business owners miss this piece. They have to be well documented. I mean, McDonald's can lose an employee and bring another one in 30 minutes. They haven't trained because of their processes. You need the policy and procedure manuals, the SOP checklist, employee handbooks, non-competes. All of this documentation needs to be in place to sell your business. So the fourth P, which is the most valuable P of all. So let me give you a crash course on evaluations. Businesses under $1 million in EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, typically traded for 1 to 4 times multiple. 1 to 4. Businesses over $1 million in EBITDA will trade typically 4 and up or 5 and up. But this P, proprietary assets, will give you the highest multiple possible. Now, SaaS companies trade for a multiple of gross revenues, not EBITDA, but that's the only industry that does. Okay. So there's 6 pillars of proprietary. I'm going to run through them really quickly. Number 1 is branding. The more well-branded your company is, the more I can sell it for, as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of the consumer. Is anybody paying any money for Blockbuster? No.
No.
The most valuable brand in the world is
Nike, Disney.
no. Nike's not even in the top 10.
Really? Like, Apple?
Apple.
Yeah.
Apple is worth $350 billion. That's without EBITDA. That's without accounts receivables, inventory, assets, real estate, just the brand alone. So build your brand. Number 2 is trademarks. Trademarks are very valuable, and people get confused about trademarks. A lot of business owners will go to the state of California. We're both from California. They'll go to California, they'll open up their business, they'll go get a state trademark in California, but they never check the federal database to make sure it's available.
Or European.
Or European. Or European. That's right. And guess what? You can be in business for 10 years, all of a sudden receive a cease and desist letter, and you're done. And they'll hire an attorney and throw a bunch of money after it, but you'll lose. And then you got to start the branding all over again. So spend $1,500 to $2,000 and trademark. Trademark your podcast name. I trademarked Exit Rich. You know, the 6 Ps, the GPS exit model. We have a company that's got about 12 different products that are exclusive to each retail grocery store chain. And each one has a federal trademark. We have strategics that are willing to pay a much higher multiple, 7, 8, 9, 10, because they want that exclusivity and they want those trademarks. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
And patents. Have you ever watched Shark Tank? You guys watch Shark Tank in the Netherlands?
Yep.
What does every investor ask every single inventor? Do you have a patent on that? Do you have a patent? Do you have a patent pending? Do you have a utility patent? Most of these offers are contingent upon the patent. We sold a company for $18 million that was losing money, but they had 18 patents. Contracts, manufacturing contracts, vendor contracts, any type of exclusivity contracts, franchisor that has franchisees. Client contracts are the most valuable, especially if they have a residual model, subscription model built into them with recurring revenue. But here's a caveat to contracts. I don't know about Europe, But in the United States, most business owners, all business owners, because I've never met one business owner that does this, they don't have the 2-sentence transferability clause that says this contract is transferable upon a new entity. So in the US, 99% of all deals are asset sales, not stock sales. So if the buyer doesn't agree to do a stock sale and the client doesn't agree to sign consent to transfer, then your deal could fall apart. So be proactive and get that transferability clause in your contracts. There was a private equity group that bought a franchisor that have 1,500 franchisees. I didn't do the transaction because I know better than this. The buyer's team did the due diligence. Nobody looked at the contracts. Nobody got the franchisees to sign a consent to transfer, and it was an asset sale. They threw a big, huge celebration party, and none of the franchisees liked the franchisor because they just said, oh, it's another private equity group that has no experience, and none of them transferred over. Within 60 days, the franchisor had to file bankruptcy, and then they sued the whole due diligence legal team. Databases are big. Nurture your databases. If they can be retargeted and repurposed, we could sell that for a lot of money. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp. And WhatsApp was making any money? No, they were hemorrhaging. Celebrity endorsements are big. Oprah. We got a client that's got products with Oprah. Competitors and strategics will pay a lot of money for that because they want to get their products in front of Oprah. Radio personalities. They can only endorse one skincare at a time, one diet company at a time, because they lose credibility. E-commerce businesses. We sell a lot of e-commerce businesses. If you can get any of those top positions on Wayfair, Etsy, Amazon, eBay, it's huge play. It's huge. I call that huge IP real estate. Okay. So that's your proprietary assets.
Yeah. I'm curious with because as you're mentioning it sort of one of those, when you see it, you can't unsee it because this all seems common sense. But how
common
often,
sense is not so common, Chris.
Exactly. I'm saying, how often do people actually structurally look at it like this? Because this is
they don't.
Tragic. Yeah.
It is tragic that 70% of businesses are going out of business in the United States. I don't know the numbers in Europe, but that is tragic. And it's because business owners are so busy working in their business, not on their business, and they're not paying attention to these details. The devil's in the details. It's very tragic.
Before we get to the last two P's, there is on page 273 of the book, there's a whole road to selling your business. It's a lovely process documented out. And in there, I think that's, that seems to be a nice checklist. The whole book is basically a checklist of stuff you should think about. But in this case, is that how you see the book being used?
It's a checklist with a lot of content.
Well, a checklist is in like there's it's full of golden nuggets, literally, and then each golden nugget has a number of pages, really, and then there's these, I think the little mentor sections. But the way I would recommend someone to read it is if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, just go through the table of contents, read every chapter, and check it off once you've actually implemented it. So, because it's packaged common sense and it's super valuable. So,
we had a media company that bought the book, and they actually emailed us a letter and called us and gave us a glowing recommendation. They said they've been in business for 20 years, that they didn't know half of this stuff, that they weren't operating on all 6 Ps, and most businesses are not, that they were operating on maybe 2 or 3. They didn't have the right people in the right seats. They didn't ask the who question. They had 0 processes. They really didn't build their proprietary assets. And they used it, like you said, kind of like a checklist, going one by one by one by one until they get through all the 6 Ps. And then they're going to call us and get us to help them to build to sell it. But they said that they learned more in this book, Exit Rich, than they've learned with their MBA and all of the other classes, business classes that they've taken. They've learned more with Exit Rich. I
can believe that. And again, I'll plug it shamelessly. So exitrichbook.com. So the last or the 5th P is a little bit of a cheat, I think.
A cheat.
Well, you didn't say customers. You had to P-ify it somehow, I think.
P-ify it. I like that. Yeah, patrons. They are patrons. Customers
True.
are patrons,
True enough.
right? True enough. And, most businesses in the United States follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your business comes from 20% of your 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. That's a big problem in the United States. I'm sure it is in Europe as well. I'll give you two examples, maybe three. We have a company we're selling in the $70 million range. They have about 65% of their business tied up in one customer. And it's difficult. We had an oil manufacturing business that we sold. It was appraised for $9.8 million. They operated on 5 of the 6 P's. They had all the P's except for patrons. They had customer concentration. 65 to 70% of their revenues was tied up in BP. We had 550 buyers look at this business. We narrowed it down to 12 LOIs, letter of intents. All of the 12 LOIs were very concerned with customer concentration, so they were going to structure the deal around an earn-out, meaning if the company lost this client, then the owner is not going to get paid on that earn-out, right? Well, luckily, we found a strategic that have similar products and services, and they have been trying for years, actually decades, to get their business into BP and never was successful. So ding, ding, ding. I said, okay, well, this is the perfect buyer, because once you are in this company, you're already in front of BP. You can get your other products and services in. And they saw that as well. So they agreed to pay $15 million for 70% of the company. A company was appraised for 9.8, which was 126% more than the asking price. That's what we do.
Love it. And
I was going to give you one more story. I had an advertising marketing company have 5 clients, 5 patrons. That's it, because they cater to casinos. But during the process of us trying to sell them between 10 to 15 million, they lost 2 of the 5. The revenues dropped in half. Their EBITDA dropped in half. They were no longer sellable. So they had to keep the same overhead to service the other 3 casinos, and they had very high overhead because you have to have good talent. When you have a media marketing company, you got to have the talent. And so we ended up having to merge them with another company that was more diversified in their patron base. The last P, the most important P to all entrepreneurs, is profits. And people are like, Michelle, why do you put profits last? And the reason why I put profits last is because lack of profits is never the problem. People come to me all the time and say, Michelle, I have a profit problem. I'm like, no, you have a people problem. No, you have a process problem. Lack of profits is a symptom of not having one of the other 5 P's in place.
beautiful. And in the appendix of the book, there is a whole section of, if I can find it quickly, the top 10 mistakes that business owners make when trying to sell their business. And one of these I was just shocked by. And so please tell me it's not true. Please tell you made it up.
If it's in the book, it's true. So hate to disappoint you.
One of the top 10, and this is top 10 mistakes. Don't hire a real estate broker to sell your business. I'm sorry, but what the F? How would someone connect those dots? And how does that happen?
Can't speak to Europe, but in the United States, mergers and acquisitions, business brokering is very unknown. I remember going and speaking in front of 1,000 people, and I would say, who's familiar with what an M&A advisor or business broker does? Raise your hand. And maybe 5%, 10% of the hands would go up. A lot of business owners don't even know what business brokers do. They don't even know that business brokers exist or M&A advisors exist. It's crazy. And so they'll hire a real estate agent. Now, the larger businesses, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million and up, of course they're going to hire advisors. But the smaller businesses, a lot of them will hire real estate agents. And that's really the kiss of death, because it's like if you need heart surgery, you're going to go to your dentist. So it's a huge mistake that business owners make. And it happens all the time. And then these real estate agents, shame on them, especially the residential ones. They try to take this gas station listing, or they take the grocery store listing, or this or that, and think that they can sell it. They don't know what they're doing. I don't go sell residential real estate because it's a whole nother ball game. It's an easier ball game than selling businesses, but it's another ball game indeed. So I don't do it. These real estate agents need to stop. They
Yeah.
need to, and I don't care who gets mad at me. They need to stop. Now if you're a commercial real estate agent, that's a little bit different because commercial is different than residential. You have a little bit more skill sets, a little bit more knowledge of business, like selling car washes and gas stations and strip centers and things of that nature. That's, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that businesses go to a commercial real estate broker to sell their business, but it's better than going to a residential real estate agent.
Or no real estate agent. For me,
I would say don't hire a real estate agent, period.
I was just
because
shocked by the option of it.
yeah, there's so more moving parts. I mean, real estate agents, they put it on the MLS. They have open houses. The more they tell, they feel the more they sell. In selling businesses, confidentiality is key. You can put that business owner literally out of business if you mess up confidentiality. So there's just so many nuances and moving parts to go with selling a business that you should never trust it to commercial or residential real estate agent.
So, Michelle, we're coming to the end. I've got one more question, and it was sparked by the conversation we had before we pressed record, which was about the movie Wish Man, about the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and that seemed to be really meaningful to you the way you were explaining it. Can you share a little bit about why that movie was important to you? And I can also put a link that's on Netflix, you said.
Yes.
What's the story of that before we wrap up?
So Frank Shankowitz was a police officer. He was in the military, so he served our country. He was also a police officer for decades. He retired as a police officer. He was a motorcycle cop back in the days of Chips, if you remember Chips, way back in the day. And he got in he had a terrible childhood. His mother told him that his father died. His mother moved out of Illinois, moved Frank to Arizona, Prescott, Arizona. And the father was coming to see him the next weekend. Father came, they were gone. Then a couple of years later, the mother said, your father died. And then the mother took off with some man and left Frank all by himself. So he had a really horrible childhood. A gentleman by the name of Juan took him in and gave him a job and took him into his house. And Frank asked me, he said, why are you taking care of me? He said, because one day you're going to pay it forward too. One day somebody's going to need you and you're going to do the right thing and give back. And so Frank didn't really know what that meant at the time because he was probably 8 years old. But anyway, as a motorcycle cop, he was in a pursuit, got in a terrible accident, thought he died. Well, he did die. A nurse just happened to pass by and gave him mouth to mouth and really brought him back to life. And shortly after that, he's like, well, what is my purpose? And a little boy, I think his name was Michael. It's either Michael or Chris, because the little boy in the movie's name is different. So I want to say the little boy's name was Michael. But Michael's dying of leukemia. And his one wish was to be a motorcycle cop, like in Chips. So they, the police department was like, well, who should do it? And Kitty, who was Frank's wife, they ended up marrying. Kitty worked in the police department. She was administrative assistant. And she said, get Frank to do it. He should do it. So Frank came in and did it. And that one little boy, they granted his wish. And he died shortly after that. They had a big funeral for him. And then it made the papers in Illinois. And I'm kind of giving the whole movie away here. Mm-hmm. And then it made the papers. Then his father saw it in the papers, finally found his son. They got to reconnect. And then Frank came back and said, you know what, if we do this for one child, we can do this for hundreds and thousands of children. So he was the true founder of Make-A-Wish Foundation, which a wish is granted, I think, every 5 seconds around the world. And the movie was made after him. And, a friend of mine who actually made his movie, Greg Reed, he asked him, he said, what is your wish, Frank? Has anybody asked you, what is your wish? Because Frank had granted so many wishes. And he said, my wish is that I get a movie made about my life and about what happened. So, it can affect, so more people will give back. And so the movie was made called Wishman. It's on Netflix. The Hollywood premiere was in Beverly Hills last year, or no, the year before, 2019. Thank God it wasn't last year. 2019, and Frank invited me to go with him. So I walked the red carpet, sat right next to him in the theater, and got to watch the movie. And I've seen the movie probably 20 times after that.
Beautiful.
And he's a dear friend of mine, and he just passed away about 6 months ago, and he's having a celebration of life. And that's why it's so touching to me. And Frank never took a penny. Here's another reason it's so touching to me. Frank never took a penny from this nonprofit. Not one penny. He retired on a cop's salary, which isn't very much. Not one penny. No. A lot of other CEOs and founders of nonprofits can't say the same. So he is a true inspiration. He's a true hero. He's a true wish man. And everybody should go watch the movie Wishman.
Beautiful. I knew that was meaningful to you, the way you were expressing it before we pressed record. So I was inspired to, triggered to ask you about it. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Sorry for your loss. Sounds like we lost someone beautiful there. And I will put a link to the movie in the show notes, as well as to the book site, exitrichbook.com. The link to seilertucker.com for your business, in case people need to reach out and they are starting to build a business that they want to exit rich. We'll also put that in there and people can find you. So, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts.
Can I tell you one more? Can I tell your listeners the value that they'll get if they buy Exit Rich in pre-sale?
Please do.
Okay, so we're in pre-sale. The book launches in June. If you go to exitrichbook.com for $24.79, you will receive the immediate digital download like you received, right? It was immediate. So you can start reading Exit Rich book today. You don't have to wait. For anybody that lives in the United States, we will mail the hardcover to your doorstep for no additional shipping. If you don't live in the United States, then of course it's additional shipping. And we will also give you the lifetime membership into the Exit Rich Book Club, which has video content and me doing deep dives and some different strategies and techniques I've been practicing for 20 years, plus documents to operate your business, documents to sell your business, sample employee handbooks, non-competes, policy and procedure manuals, org charts, sample letter of intents, purchase agreements, due diligence checklists, closing docs, and more. All these documents, Chris, would cost over $30,000 to go to your attorney and recreate. They're there for your review and download. Plus, we will give you a 30-day membership into Club CEOs, which is an entrepreneur mastermind, where we ask those transformational questions to help business owners build a sustainable, scalable business. And when they're ready, it is sellable. All of that for $24.79 at exitrichbook.com.
Beautiful. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player and download the Simplicity Kit from ebullient.com.